what kind of feeling would I have if some, hostile military people were in my house? I would say fury and anger. However, this is not what I felt. I was surprised. I felt disgusted. I felt dirty, looking at some guys walking inside my house. So it was like an obvious decision. It's not about money. It's about efforts put into the house. I want to do everything possible to help Ukraine win.
Okay, this is fascinating. That is the Ukrainian military, Andrey Stavnitser, who apparently owns a large estate west of the capital, who had a camera inside of his house that let him know that Russians were there. So he contacted the Ukrainian military and asked them to bomb his own home to take out those who had been hiding in it. I'm gonna give you more of the details. He was talking in that video with Good Morning Britain. He said he'd abandoned the property relatively recently. Bear in mind, again, this is to the west of the capital. So despite the fact that most of the offensive is focused on the east, there are distributed troops in a number of different areas. So he says that they missed a webcam that he used to spy on them. He watched them store stolen goods in it, put vehicles outside and fire rockets from his property. And apparently his request to the military just might have been followed because drone video shows massive damage to the property and what appears to be a military vehicle destroyed there. So it is possible that his webcam feed and his tip to them led to a strike that might have killed some of those soldiers. I've never seen anything like this in war before.
It's remarkable. I mean, I guess the only equivalent would be in the past. I mean, in several, I guess Jack was reminding me last night that in Napoleon, when he went into Russia with his French troops, the Russians burned their own villages before Napoleon's troops could get there. That way the Russians would take away any sort of supply lines or resources that Napoleon's troops had. So I guess there are occasions when a military and army will sort of burn things to try to make sure that they are denied to the invading forces. But for a private citizen, and a wealthy private citizen who's obviously got a lot to lose by having his own army bomb and destroy his estate, it's remarkable. And I think it goes right to how much the Ukrainians can't stand what Russia's doing to their country.
Yeah, 100%. Well, look, in the very early days of the invasion, we heard about the preemptive destruction of bridges, making it so that there were less areas, especially for Russian tanks, to move into certain cities. You try to funnel them by destroying infrastructure. We know that that's fairly common. Sometimes in some of these areas, buildings were destroyed to create debris in the streets that would slow down the advance. And so these are tactics that you use. I just personally have never seen an individual civilian calling for it, which is a little bit odd. Other details though, I wanted to follow up. We talked last week about the new $800 million package of lethal aid, i.e. massive weapon systems that are being sent by the US to Ukraine, including things like long-range artillery, like howitzers, literally hundreds of armored vehicles and helicopters. Well, there's been some debate over the past few days about whether Ukrainian soldiers would even be able to use some of this equipment, which Vladimir Zelensky earlier this week answered, "We're plenty smart enough, we'll figure it out." Well, in addition to that, the Pentagon has now confirmed that US soldiers are gonna be training Ukrainians on how to use those howitzers specifically. Although, and when I first saw that, I thought, oh dear God, is this the tipping point where our soldiers are moving in? Well, not technically, although it's gonna be up to Vladimir Putin about whether this distinction matters. The training will not be taking place inside of Ukraine. The Ukrainian soldiers will be leaving the country, perhaps to somewhere like Poland or Romania, where equipment and weapons transfers have been conducted previously in this war. They will be trained there and then return inside of Ukraine. This is one of those wrinkles, David, where like we couldn't give them jets, that's too far. But apparently the artillery and helicopters, which are another type of aircraft, are allowed. And we can't man the howitzers, but we can give them the howitzers and train them and using them. It is bizarre what's allowed diplomatically and what's not.
Yeah, I mean, the line seems pretty flimsy to me. But the thing about the Pentagon is the Pentagon has had these contingency plans apparently for months. And there's been all sorts of options that have been presented to the Secretary of Defense about here's how far we can go. And here's what we would do if we want to train on helicopters and planes. Here's how we would take the aircraft. Here's what we're going to do if it's howitzers and mortars. So clearly there's somebody at the Pentagon who's making the decision about where the line is, and everything that's below the line. Okay, let's get the Ukrainian troops to Poland or nearby, and let's have our troops who are there with all of the instruction manuals and everything in Ukrainian so that they know exactly what they're doing. The good thing about the howitzer is it's not the most complicated piece of military equipment, so that's something that there should be a pretty quick turnaround. But look, I mean, if you're Vladimir Putin, it's going to drive you crazy, even if the United States is providing something small like a hand grenade and showing the Ukrainians how to pull the trigger.
Exactly. Yeah. And he had been warning the US last week about this most recent package. I mean, look, obviously having US soldiers there, that's a very clear line. It definitely feels like it's getting muddled. Obviously, the Ukrainians need this equipment. They want it. They've been advocating for this for more than this. Just watching every day and hoping the US does not get pulled into this. And thus far, they've walked that line very carefully and it seems to have worked, but we're gonna keep our eyes on it.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.